Okay, so now let's work on the features section. And looking at the features section, you see it actually has two parts. The upper part containing text and the lower part having three columns, each of which has text and heading, and these circle with the column number. Now, from the way you look at these, you can see that this is a section of the page that has its content arranged one on top of the other, this upper part, text, and the lower side containing these three columns. But if you look at this upper part that's made up of text, you see that this is something we could reuse in other part of the site if I had more than one pages. If you've seen something like this, it's central text like this. What that suggests is that this is a typical candidate that can be reused in other parts. So we're going to set that out first, create it as a reusable piece. Now, so as usual, I have the content copied to the clipboard, so I spend less typing. And so let's quickly run through the selectors. As usual, you see we have the utility styles, FL Core, and Rule PD this time around. That means that this section has its content stacked one on top of the other, and that's what happens. The text on top, these three columns beneath, and within this section of the page, the content are arranged horizontally, that is, flex direction there must have been row. Okay, so inside a feature, you have the section header, which is the reusable piece. And if you look at it, the selector is named in a way that it is not tied to the parent selector. This is section header. It's not tied to features, which means that I can use it anywhere. I can reuse it anywhere in my website. All right. So it will make sense for the CSS that style this section header to be in its own separate file. And of course, if we were doing something like React or Next.js or any of the JavaScript framework or library, this piece of HTML will equally have been in its own file. So in that case, we wouldn't just be talking about reusability in terms of CSS, we also will be talking about it in terms of JSX or component, all right, HTML component. Okay, so since we have all of our HTML in one file now, demonstrating that is out of the scope of this course. Let's create the file for the CSS or the SCSS. And where do you think it should be in our 7-in-1 architecture? If you set component, then you must be right. So in the component folder, let's create another file that I will call just the selector name, section header.scss, like so. And here, let me say section header, give it a width 70%, and by that, a margin of auto, text alignment center. From the finished version, you see that the text was centered. With that out of the way, then I can then target the heading there. Okay, you see it has a section header heading. Let me be sure. What did we call it here? Yeah, section header heading. Okay, let me use the opportunity to save the file. So what do we want there? We want a font size of 4.5 rem. So I override the default or the global font size I defined. And what else? I want a padding of about 2 rem. So I want it to stand apart. And what else do I want? Okay, that should do. Then the next thing is the text. And that text, I want a font size of 1.8. Override the default again, or the root font size we define. And let me give it a margin bottom, so it stands away from whatever combinated. Margin bottom of say 5 rem. But this time around, rather than apply the color to individual element here or content here, let me just apply it to the parent by saying color equals white. All right. And if you watch some of our previous lesson, you see that we can inherit, or a child can inherit a property defined in its parent. And this is a typical example of that. So here now, it means that the heading and the text will be white because I have declared white for the parent. If I give this a save and check what we have so far, good. Now we have it, but of course the section header isn't applied yet, and I'm sure you know the reason why it is like that. Well, because we've not imported it in the main.scss. So let's do that. So I'll come to main.scss, and what do I need to do? I just import that file, and it's in component slash, I have it in section header, and save. And for some reason I have SCSS here for button. It doesn't hurt, but it's not required actually. So give it a save. Color white. White. Oh, this is color white. This is color white, not just white. Color white. Let me save. Okay, so I think I have things back now. Okay, there we go. So the section header has been applied, and that takes care of that. I'm back here in the home.scss. Let me create the feature selector. Let me come down a bit. Features. And what do we have in the features? There we have the feature list, the item, and the number. So let me define those out first. List, item. Now, so for the list, let's see what we have in there. You see that the list contains FL core, WD3, and featured item. These are utility styles. Of course, you understand what this does. Okay. And what are the content? This span, this heading, and this paragraph. So they should be one on top of the other. Good. And W3 there means a width of 30%. And since we have 3 of them there, that's 30 times 3, that gives us 90. So we'll have a space of 10% share among those 3 items. Okay. And we have item number there. That's responsible for the circle, the secondary color circle with number in them. Here, in terms of them, is an element. This is an element. This is an element. So they are not necessarily a child of the other, though we have it inside it. So that's the reason why I have targeted them individually. But of course, I can pull them inside each other and I'll still get result, but it may make my code a little bit unreadable. So let's target the item or the list first. The list. What do we need to do with the list? I will say justify content, space between, and I'm spacing them between because I already set a width of 30% for each of them. So I want to see the gap there. And in that case, it means that the main axis is horizontal and the cross axis is vertical. So I can afford to give them an align items to center. And let me give a margin bottom of 3 rem in case something is beneath it. Then for the item, I can set the align item to center. Don't forget that the item has a flex direction of column applied to it. Okay, and if it has a flex direction of column applied to it, it means that the main axis is the vertical axis, while the cross is horizontal. If I set align item to center, what it means is that the items will be at the center horizontally this time around. Horizontally. This thing could be a bit tricky, but with time you will get used to them. And justify content will also be center, which means that this time around their position or alignment vertically will be center, and their height, I don't need to define it, but if I wanted to, I could say auto, but I don't need to. And the reason is because they are flex item, and at the same time they are also flex. That is, they are container. Let's look at it. I had this explained in the Flexbox section. Remember that the list here is a container. It's a flex container. And what makes it so? It's FLRow utility class is applied to it. And if we check that class has a display set to flex. So that makes it a flex container. Now, because this is inside it, this div, the three of them, and because it is inside it, it means that this feature item is a flex item. And being a flex item, I can afford to set its justification and alignment. But at the same time, by having FL core applied to it, it also now becomes a flex container at the same time. So it's both a flex item and a flex container. So what's the summary there? A flex item can also be a flex container at the same time. All right, so as a flex item and flex container now, it means that being a flex item here, it will take the height of the item with the highest height. And if you look at the HTML, I have the same sort of content in them. And so what else do I want? I want the background color of white. As you can see from the finished version, color white. And it has a tiny border radius, so border radius of 1 rem. Okay. And again, you see our browser prefaces kick in. So now, within that item, I have another, well, let me take this out. I have another element with features item number. Now, so I can avail myself of the style of naming here, item dash number, to select it rather than having to, write it out on its own. So what can I do? I can just say number, like so. And if I hover over it, let's see if the selector is correct. You see, feature item number. All right. If I didn't do this, I will have to come to the end of the item and also create its own. But of course, the way I name it, it's better it saves me time to retype the whole selector. I want its display to be flex. And I hope you know what we are targeting now. Let me show you. This span. So it's a flex item now. And by setting its display to flex again here, it means I have made it also a flex container. And if I say display flex, you understand what that means. Automatically, it's going to have flex direction of row. So justify content. I want to set it to center so that the items stay at the center. Align item. I want them center also. Okay. If you look at the finished version, it has a color of orange from the finished version, color of orange, and the text orange. So if I set the color, and that color primary or secondary, and the border is also color secondary. But for us to have it as a circle there, I actually have to display or define its width. So let me do that one up here. Let me say the width is say 5 rem and height of 5 rem also. And by that, I have to set border radius to 50%. Let's check what we have. Oh, so what happened? I have not set a background color. Container features. Okay, I see. Background color. Color what? Color primary. What's happening? Oh, I actually defined it in the wrong place. My apologies. It's here. Okay. Good. So that's it. So we're still styling this element. What do we have there? Give it a padding 3 rem. And for the item, let me give it a font size of 3 rem. And give it a font weight of bold. All right, so what about our border radius? Let's check what's happening. Border radius. Or this border radius and not border. 1 pixel. Solid. Color this. And I think I have to refactor or rearrange things. These browser prefaces are for these border radius. It's good, they follow each other. Okay. Good. And finally, looking at the finished version, you see that it has this border top left radius. So I'll have 30 rem. So that's our features section. And if you compare with the finished version now, where it does appear as the text alignment here is center. What is it here? Let's check. Good. This is what I want. So that's the features section. And next, we'll look at the next section.